We are live.
We're live at Senate Appropriations, February 13th. Valentine's Day is tomorrow, but we won't be here. It's our last day of the week. And
It's Friday the 13th.
it's Friday the 13th. Yeah. We're going through FY27 budget requests. And today we have Agency Agriculture. I'll let you introduce yourselves for the record and give us your presentation.
Well, thank you, Senator. Thank you for allowing us to come in and talk about our budget. I'm Mason Tabbets, Secretary of Agriculture, Food and Markets, and I'm joined by our Financial Director, Amy Mercer, is with us as well. And I'm here to present our proposed budget for the fiscal year running from July 1 this year through the following July. You as a legislature are facing some incredibly difficult decisions. Transforming our education system, addressing property taxes, and responding to challenges in housing and public safety. And agriculture intersects with all these issues and has a role to play in our future. So just a couple of highlights on our budget. It largely level funds our core programs. And that, I think, in a current economic and budgetary climate, we consider that a real victory. With those constraints, we're making some targeted investments, though, in a few key areas. One thing that we'll want to highlight for you is affordability. We will be reducing the cost for our dairy farmers and also strengthening our business support staff, one of the smallest staffs in state government. And that is the aim of that is to improve customer service for our farmers and producers across the line. So with that, I can start going through a few of our slides, and I always like to begin with our mission at the Agency of Agriculture, which is to facilitate, support, and encourage the growth and viability of agriculture while protecting the working landscape, human health, animal health, plant health, consumers, and the environment. So looking over the flow of funds and some of the breakdowns that we have, essentially, we have a $61.19 million ask for FY 2027. If you look at the graph here on the pie chart of where it's all broken down, indirects are about 3%, general fund, about 22% of our dollars. We have special funds, about 40%, and then federal dollars, about 33%.
And can you give it, maybe you have this later, Secretary, these, but what are some examples of the
Sure. Yes. So we can go sort of the flow of funds, I think is our next slide. So if you look at general fund, it's 22% of our base budget. And that essentially covers a lot of our internal services, our benefits, our salaries. And there are some of our economic development core programs that fund some of those as well. Federal funds, 33% of our base budget. So we receive funds from the federal agencies. It may come to USDA, FDA, and EPA. For example, in USDA, we can get into more detail later on. We'll post slides on it. It's the Northeast Dairy Business Innovation Center. It's a multi-million-dollar center that we manage for the Northeast. But that's an example. We get some smaller funds through FDA, for example, produce safety work we do for them, and also EPA. We have some modest dollars that we get from them. Special funds, it's 40% of our base budget. So that's fees, licenses, registrations. For example, pesticide registration fees are used to support some of our lab work, but also some of our enforcement work in that world. Small interdepartmental transfer funds, so that's about 5% of our base budget. It could be something from labor coming over for us to help with farm worker housing inspections, for example. So that's an example there. 6 appropriations we have the administration, which Amy and myself are part of. We have food safety and consumer protection, agriculture development, plant industry, Vail, which is the lab in Randolph, and then we have agriculture, water quality division. So those are the different divisions that we have. Again, another slide breaking down the exact dollars. and the percentages, in the proposed budget. It's a small increase. Just about a 2% increase to make our targets on our categories.
Your total subject is 2%.
Yeah. 1.8% essentially.
All right.
So if you look at some of the areas of increase, and some of it mostly is the cost of doing business, contributions we make for retirement, medical leave, childcare. And then there's the clean water grants. You'll see an increase in that, and that's money that comes through the clean water fund. The board that develops a budget with other agencies and the public, and then they present that to the governor, and it's included in the governor's proposal, and then legislature acts on that proposal.
And then that incremental transfers, is that like SLAs, is that things like that? Yeah, like SLAs for Agency of Digital Services, that included in interdepartmental transfers, or what are the?
Not in interdepartmental transfers. For the record, Agent Mercer, Financial Director. That would be paid for with special funds, general funds.
What are your interdepartmental transfers?
So that is, so internal service fees, is that?
Would that be part of that, or you don't?
No, interdepartmental transfer funds are monies that we receive from other agencies to assist work, and it could be, like.
Water quality could be.
All right.
Right.
You and A&R.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So internal service funds are your Department of Human Resources allocation, your
BGS.
BGS.
Those aren't.
Yes.
So it's mainly getting paid for your staff working.
Correct.
Through another agency. Okay.
And then a couple of, and then you, at the bottom, you'll see, a couple of things with federal funds at the bottom, 1.5 in the food system infrastructure grants. And then the internal one, is the transfer funds. That's a Lake Champlain Basin program. That's a 2-state, New York, Vermont collaborative, and federal funds come to that, and then we get some of those funds that come to us. A couple of areas of decrease, and a bit of caution on the Dairy Business Innovation Center contract. So it shows up as a $3.5 million decrease, but essentially, what is happening is it's a USDA funded program, and they're sending the money in smaller chunks as they come to us. So in this particular case, we had money that was going out in contracts, right? And now we're going to be doing it more to the producer side of it. So technically, it is a decrease, but the money is coming, but it's not coming as quickly as possible. So the money's going out a little bit differently and slower. So that's why it's reflected as a decrease. We did get some good news a couple of weeks ago. USDA put some of these funds on hold as they reviewed them. We normally would get notice in October, but they did release the funds to us. So we're back on schedule. So we can start getting those dollars out to the farmers and processors over the next few months. The center is Vermont, all of New England, New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey as well. So you dealt with some of the federal funds that went away during the change in administration last year. The local food systems and schools grants, local food purchase assistance grants, and then this $1 million one at the bottom. We're coming to the end of the granting. Was a 5-year grant to us to work on some water quality work, and that's just coming to the end. So it'll be a decrease reflected. And then the next one, as we get to we're asking for one new position of the agency, and this would be in the business office. The business office has a total of 4 employees, but we're managing a tremendous amount more dollars, particularly on the federal side, state side with grants and contracts. So this position would support Amy's department, and we would go to the pool to get that position.
As in, the extra cost is in your budget.
So
Yes.
about 127.
130.
That's a, I don't need the exact number, I just want to make sure you already budgeted for it.
Yeah,
Correct. Yes.
So we would go from 4 to 5 positions in that office. Here are our level funded items. The fairs and field days, farm to plate, the Natural Resources Conservation Council, farm to school, some local food grants and working lands, all remaining level funded for the year.
Is that farm to school, do you have to match the federal money you get?
I don't believe so. This is general fund money.
Just to increase the program?
What's the fair stipend for?
The fair stipend, we operational grants, so the fairs, field days, they apply. And depending on the size and scope of the fair, they're ordered. I think anywhere around $40,000 sometimes they're grant. And some of the requirements, you have to be open 3 times to qualify. So it's an operational one, but there's also capital ones. And the capital ones,
That's different.
that goes with the capital budget.
So you got 300,000 that is there.
Yes, and those are, if you wanted to put in a new bandstand, or if you want to put more seating in, that kind of thing goes through the capital budget. But these are the operational funds that help support this community. That's,
You have to apply for that?
yes,
Okay, I thought they just got it every year.
yeah, no, there's an application that they go through.
Yeah, you just said they had to apply. That was news to me because I thought they always just got it.
Well,
They apply and then if they
They all-
apply, they get it. They
They
just
all-
have to be open for 3 consecutive.
but they
days.
apply for both of them, right?
Yes.
This one and the capital.
Yes.
There's nobody else applying. Not
No.
competitive.
It's just,
No,
Yeah.
no, it's
If
like
they
four
apply, they
days.
get it. If they were open more than 3 days, pretty much.
Right.
It's based on a formula.
That's not fair.
they have to be open 3 consecutive days for the
Being
fair
able to be
event.
eligible. Correct.
We can walk through some of the highlights and the crosswalk full review. Talked about the, basic salaries and benefits, and then the one position that we're asking for. We are budgeting on the ABS side as they go to a new formula. We think, judging on our conversation, we're kind of guessing, but we think maybe about a $55,000 increase for us. And move to the food safety and consumer protection. This is, dairy inspections, meat inspection, weights and measures, et cetera. Pretty standard. We did have, and this is where the FDA trimmed us on a produce safety program. We go out and inspect fruits and veggies. The education part, we had to trim, so we're doing the inspections, but we're not doing as much with the education with a grant to the University of Vermont extension on that, so that's been trimmed by about $30,000.
Yes, there was.
Thank you. I may be mistaken about this, but haven't there been some cuts at the federal level for food safety?
Yeah, and it's been translated back to the States with some of those.
Okay.
So this particular program was started probably, we had a big food scare out of California, maybe a decade ago. And one of the gaps that they discovered was not enough inspection. So they created this program through FDA, and they gave block grants to the state to try to manage them. So they, knew all the farms were good practices, because each state is different size and scale. So they send us money, and then we built a program essentially ramping up for inspections, because a lot of farms were not being inspected at all.
Mhm.
You know how they want vegetables. There could be animal production near the, veggies.
Mhm.
And so they built the program, and it going pretty well. And then the FDA, I think nationally, it was about I think total it was a 40% trim, which got translated back to the state.
So is that in part why that that this program got trimmed?
Yeah, we had to take away, we continued with the inspections, but we decided that to make it work, we had to, the educational component that we worked with, we have extension on best practices that we had to trim that by about $100,000. But, yeah,
Okay,
so,
well, it's good to know where that came from.
yeah. So now we're in the agriculture development, part of it. Basic standard salaries and benefits. We mentioned some of the reductions that came through USDA. The local food one, and I think you backfilled that a little bit last year with some dollars that was lost. There is some, there's a bipartisan bill in Congress that would try to restart this year. This was one of those that bought, purchased local food, and then it was distributed to those in need through some of the networks. So that was on its way, and then it got trimmed. It was one of the probably our biggest that we lost through that. And then the bottom one there is the farm to school reduction of 30,000. There's the dairy farmers have a promotional campaign. They are assessed a certain amount, 15 cents per 100 liters of milk, goes into a fund. And they use those dollars for promotion, for research. It's not state dollars, but through their statute, we manage that program at the agency. So they've trimmed that farm to school by about $30,000 and put it into other things. You can look at, we do get, we get grants out for folks in our agriculture development arm. It's mainly our economic development part of the agency. 80% of what we do is regulatory, but there is a part with economic development. You can see some of the dollars. We have considerable federal dollars that are supporting state dollars as well. I think you've been briefed on one of our key programs is the Working Lands Program, and that's both forestry and agriculture. And you can see some of the investments. Base budget is $1 million, which we're asking for, and we have a $20,000 gift from Ski Vermont that they give us each year, which is really quite nice for us to have. And you can see some of the investments we made, how it's over the last decade, how many jobs it's created, investments across all of 15 counties. And some of our service providers also receive dollars to help our farmers essentially help with business plan as well.
Do you have a carryover somewhere? These funds?
We do have, at the tail end, we do have a slide on carryovers. If you want to go to that.
Well, I guess no, I guess it is on here. I mean, are you getting the money out? Like the money out?
Yes.
Like in 4.27, no, that was the request, but you only had some funds.
Yeah, we're well over prescribed the request. It's a very competitive program, and we have a number of applications. And we were fortunate to have some Arbor dollars that we used. We also had some one-time money over the last few years that been very, very helpful. But now we're back to the base. And we did increase the base as well. It was at one point it was 426,000, I think, and we got up to $1 million a couple of years ago, which has been very, very helpful. But we had one-time money and Arbor money, so we were able to do some bigger grants, more grants. But we're returning to sort of back to the cadence of what it was in the past.
So what are you looking for this year for your Working Lands grant?
1 million on the base, which is level funded, and then the 20,000 ski areas will continue. but we do not have a one-time ask or an increase in that.
Okay, thank you.
The next one is the, talked a little bit about it, is the USDA Dairy Business Innovation Center. 11 states, all New England, New York, and we kicked out about $50 million so far. It's become extremely popular, and it's essentially infrastructure with some marketing. So if someone wants a pasteurizer for, they want to make cheese, maybe it's on the farm, they want a robotic milker, and help finance it. These are grants to farmers and also people in the dairy industry. We have a little map. We've awarded 488 grants. The average grant is about $85,000, anywhere from $10,000 to on the higher end. We've done $1 million grant as well that went to Ag and Market Cat for work they're doing in them. You've probably seen in the store the cracker cuts. Cracker cuts where they're already for your convenience. Well, they need an investment in a machine. They were hand packing those for convenience. So the automation, we're able to help them get a new machine up in the town cabin. But that's one of our larger ones, but we have smaller ones, or, study cow farms, or goat farms, sheep farms, cheese makers.
Did you call it a center?
Yeah, innovation center.
But I assume it's not, a center is like
Yeah, it's like
a staff member.
yeah, it's not a physical location. Although someday we would like to have a brick and mortar cheese school or dairy processing. People could come and are working on that. That could be coming along the way. Find dollars for that. But UVM had one many years ago where people from out the country could come and learn how to make dairy products. But that would be a dream to have the brick and mortar. But we've got some studies that have been done on that and how to achieve that. So hopefully over the next 3 or 4 years, we'll be able to pull that off.
How many staff just work on them?
6.
Six.
There's 6. And they're all
Federally funded.
all for the
It's great.
plant industry. You may recall it as farm, but farm is an odd word. So just going back, all their work is centered around the plant. Standard increases, yeah, pretty basic there. The lab down in Randolph, just essentially increases benefits. We do have something, we go through the capital budget if there's some need for a piece of equipment to experiment or testing. We go through the capital budget. Clean water continues to roll along. We have some federal dollars in there, some MOUs with DNC. And then this is one of our significant changes that we're asking for. We're asking to reduce 2 major fees for our dairy farmers. One is in the medium farm operations. So these are in 200 to 700 cows. And then the large farm is 700 plus. The medium farm operations have paid an annual fee of $1,500, and the large farms have paid a fee of $2,500. Small farms have not paid the fee, so that's not why it's not reflected here. Over when the Act 64 was created about a decade ago, we started with a fee. We would like to reduce those fees and shift that over to general fund dollars. The dairy economy is extremely difficult right now. We understand this is not going to solve some of the structural problems that are in the federal system of dairy pricing, but it is one less bill that our farmers would have to pay, and they can pay something else with it and not have to pay this annual fee. And I think the total is it 231,000, something like that. 231,500 change to general fund, and it would impact about 141 farmers. So 141 farmers would benefit.
Okay, Senator Bruce.
So I think I fully understand why you would ask for this and understand from my time on the Ag Committee how narrow the margin of working. Just in general though, with this governor, he's, as a policy for his time in office, he said he's not going to raise fees. And so often we have fees remaining stagnant for 6 years, 8 years, 10 years. And that creates its own harsh realities in the budget. Here we're going a step further and saying we're going to get rid of fees and just transfer them to the general fund. I would like to see if there was some in the administration, some willingness to not have everything either fees sort of by fiat not being raised and then now being eliminated. There are some fees like in the judiciary, which because they haven't been raised over the years, organizations are, threatening to go bankrupt that we depend on. So that would be my only question here is, we're not just continuing down the road of impoverishing things paid for by the fees, we're accelerating by getting rid of fees and going into the general fund. Thoughts on that?
And I think why we're asking for this is because we have very little control over the price farmers are paid for the product. It's the tribal system. So I think this is a way for us to take one bill off the pile. And I'm not sure it's and I understand where I understand you're coming from, because back in the old days there was sort of a fee schedule, like each agency, it's your turn and you did adjust for that. But I think these farmers may pay another fee, they might pay another fee they're paying in something in some part of the business. So I think this is an attempt to address in a small way and shifting over to all the taxpayers. And the other thing is that competitiveness event as well. I think we're pretty much the only state in the region, or certain region has a fee to operate. But and that was done because of the creation of the water quality initiative, 10 years ago, and that's why it was done. It was in all the creative programs and so forth. But so I think that's sort of our view on it. We haven't really reflected on the other fees, except we wanted to help this particular section because it's difficult.
Yeah. Understood. Just trying to make my concern is not with this fee, but with the administration's entire approach to fees and how they basically lose buying power over time because they're not being raised. With that said, I'll let you.
And I certainly agree with that. About the administration.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Senator Lyons, have a question?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the 675,000 increase in Champlain Basin grants. Is that a guarantee that you have? That or is this an ask that you're going to be making? And because that's then in addition to the 231,000.
This is interdepartmental transfer funds. So this funding would be coming from agency and natural resources.
Okay, so
And
it's
behind that would be, on their side, would be federal funding being passed over to us.
okay. And then is there any funding that would come from the Clean Water Fund?
Yes, yeah, we get 2.5 million about that is developed, and that will come to us based on the budget process that goes through the
Right, goes through the whole thing.
So that would, and we're comfortable with that, working with our other agencies and partners with that. I also want to highlight that we're not changing with the fees, we're not changing any programming at all. So we're going to continue working on what needs to be done to improve water quality. I just want, we're not reducing employees or programming with the switch.
Still doing the,
Just doing it, just the funding source is different.
okay. We have our next witnesses out in the hallway.
Yeah.
Waiting. If there's any other highlights or,
And we'll just leave you with, if the performance measures are there in the back of
Yeah, I'd like-
your file, so you can look at those at your convenience, and if you have any questions, we're happy to answer those.
Senator Norris?
Just a quick question, federal funds, any problems them coming in or?
I think the big ones that, we were concerned about, but it's day to day, you never know. And at some point, there's some discussion, they may create new programs that they're said, people wanting 1 year into this. But there's tremendous pressure across the country and other states to, I talked about, our farm economy not being great. It's just as bad in other states as well. So there's tremendous pressure on the administration to figure some of this stuff out there. So stay tuned. But right now we're kind of day to day and looks, I don't think it's any more we can really trim right now. We haven't been told about it.
Senator Westman?
How many farms do we have?
There's about 450 including road and we, I think it's going to be a rough 6 to 9 months. We're having another really, and the other equation is the price of animals are very high now, very high. So that it is in some ways an incentive, something that wants to exit the business. They can get a good price for their animals.
I would just say, I haven't heard anybody talk about it. My neighboring farm went out, it was organic. It's the last farm in practically my town. But we've got, I think, one other, but in the current use program where you have to have a legitimate farmer that makes more than half of their income offering that to stay in agriculture country of the last 5 years, it's virtually impossible to find anybody in grant agriculture.
Yeah, I understand. And the organic market has turned around as well. Now there's a shortage of organic milk, but getting people transitioned to organic production is a long process. So it's, 5 years ago, we were just the opposite. So it's,
But with the price of cattle being so high, it's
incentive now.
What's the difference in price now? Organic is 40, 42?
Yeah, it depends. It depends on some of the components and the protein, the butter, fat. But one of the advantages for the organic is that they know what their price is going to be paid each month. So they know and unlike the conventional market is they're paid a month after they deliver the product. So this is supply and demand. And then,
Where are they right now? About 18?
oh, they're I think $4 below cost of production. I think it's so that was, some people were saying $15 milk. And we've had $20 milk for a few years and it's been okay. But the inputs are extremely high now as well, energy and stuff. So we're going through another really difficult stretch.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate it. Everyone have a fantastic rest of Friday and we can.
Yeah,
get it.
likewise. Thanks for all that. info.
Thank you.
I still have a form.
Yeah.
Bob will pro tem.
Just let me share.
I'm here for my file.
What?
If I stay in today, it's not.
Oh, yeah.
That's how that works now?
With alter the rules. Because I have no incentive, because I've never been first.
Thanks, I know, we really do have to.
Well, yeah. Might have a new system, how to earn.
Yeah, that's right, we'll have a Quizlet.
For every hour of unworked
Off mute.
We're back to committee and we have the legislative council, not legislative, what are we calling them? The legislative directors, all talking about legislative expenditures and that, but I'll let you introduce yourselves and give us your presentations.
Perfect. Good afternoon, Scott Moore, Legislative Finance Manager for the Joint Fiscal Office. I brought with me all the legislative directors. I don't know if you want to all say hello or not, it's up to you. While I share my screen.
Are they just here for emotional support? Are they
Yeah.
If they're gonna talk, then you introduce.
I often need lots of support, Senator Person. No, I don't actually make any jokes. So I have prepared this presentation and Elle had it's on the website, I believe.
Yeah.
So as we go through this, just to talk about the FY27 budget for the legislative branch. The legislative branch does include General Assembly in terms of legislators, as well as the legislative IT, legislative council, the fiscal office, the sergeant of arms, HR, speakers, office, and the House of Office as well. So like I said, I'm sure you've heard or haven't yet. You're going to hear lots of different people come in and talk about how the budgets work and what the budget instructions have given us. So just a quick background, budget instructions come out sometime in August, and the budget instructions give us the instruction to increase the budget within about 3%, try not to go over 3% of the overall budget. And in that include 5.4% increase for pay act, the estimated 5% for healthcare, as well as any increase in the federal service fund fees. At that point in time, they suggested that we cap them at 3%, knowing that they might increase. Typically, the final total service fund costs are calculated at the end of December. This is what I put together for you here. Make it a little bit bigger, maybe.
And the legislature is what you have down at the bottom, but it's also all ledge play, ledge pay, pro tem speaker, and anything connected to
the legislature, General Assembly, exactly. So that General Assembly includes, you can see General Assembly are the members, the House clerk,
House clerk.
Yeah, clerk, House clerk, apparently. First time I've seen that picture, but the Senate Secretary and Office of Human Resources. So you can see here that we have estimated $25,685,794 for the FY27 increase, a request from last year, which is an increase of $1.1 million over FY26. You will notice the FY26 column does say adjusted appropriation. If you remember last year at the end of the session, we added $1.5 million to the legislative budget in anticipation of the session running long, cost for the mezzanine project, things like that. So because of that being added to the budget, we didn't want that to be considered added to the base. If that had been in there, you would see $44,703. If you remember a couple weeks ago, I came in there and talked about that budget number of 26 million. But to compare apples to apples, we reduced it by the 1.5 million, just so you can kind of see what the actual cost would be year over year. And one other thing I'd point out in the right-hand column is you change in percentage. The legislature being negative 2.5% decrease, the Legislative Council being a 20% increase, JFL being an 8% increase. That's the effect of the legislative operations duties being split up. So we took about $900,000 away from the legislature and split that about 777 to the legislature, so and then 123 to JFL. So those percentages look a little bit skewed in some.
So did you use that money that we added at the end of the year for federal? Or I mean, if we thought we were gonna have another.
I'd have to go let you see how many weeks extra went last year. Compare, as you might remember, about $200,000 a week is the estimated cost between salary and benefits. So I have to go look and see exactly what we're at.
We would have used that money.
Yeah.
I think we went up like 4 weeks. Seemed like it was forever.
I know that I kept making sure you all got your expenses paid and thought to myself, go home so I can stop paying all this money. So with that said, the one other thing that we do with the legislature, it's a little bit different than other agencies that come in here, is we do have a meeting with the Joint Legislative Management Committee. So Senator Ryan, Senator Ruth have already heard this big presentation. we go at the middle of December to the committee to say, here's what we propose the budget will be. Then you get approval from them. Along the way, we also be meeting with finance and management as other agencies do. At that meeting in December 12th, I presented a budget that was $25,519,000, only $974,000 increase as opposed to $1.1 million increase I just mentioned. The difference of the $166,000 is the increase in internal service fund fees that happened after. So essentially I presented on the 12th and by the 17th, they had new numbers. So this number here, the 974, that was at that time. And then later on, I did send a memo to the chair, vice chair of General MC to let them know that we had that number, another $166,000 increase to add, which is how we got that 1.1 million pictured in the last slide.
Who else is on GMLC?
Senator Baruth and Senator Lyons and Senator Clarkson, senators, and then those House
Three house members. And the name of
the speaker, and I forget about my head, three other ones.
Karen Nolan.
Teresa Woods.
No.
Just it's 3 and 3.
But we don't need one, sir.
Okay.
That's pretty.
So the
And then he gave reversions.
the reversion.
These are the things that were in the VA, that there was some slight.
Correct. So the reversion at $17,000, part of my portfolio, the other thing I look at is the capital bill. And that capital bill process, we go back and look at any old one-time appropriations of monies that are 2 years old or older to say, are we using this? Is this something we need? Can we give it back? What's going on with these things? That's $17,000 and $70,065. The $17,000 was from a basic needs technical advisory committee that was left over. And the $65 is left over from energy subcommittees we had. So the point of the fact is we weren't planning on using that $17,000 for things, and so we reverted it back to the general fund section. And as Senator Person did mention, the one other thing I forgot to mention, the BAA that we're on the floor talking about, these numbers here in the FY26, that is pre-BAA. So after BAA, those numbers will change. If you remember, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. So what were the increases? Essentially, 88% of that is through people. And healthcare costs increase. We had pay act costs. There was another position that the Sergeant of Arms like to have. That's $25,000. It's not a lot, but that is included in that 88% of what's in the position. We'll get to that in just a moment. Soon, the rest of the percentage increase is basically stuff. So here we can see we have 5.4% increase in salaries. Healthcare is at the time was projected about 5%, and then increased internal service funds are there as well. So the staffing request here, the Sergeant of Arms like to have a new head tour guide position. That position would be part-time year round. It's an unbenefited position, so the only cost of the salary, as I mentioned, is about $25,000. That would help manage the tours in the spring and the fall, and then in the off session, there would be less need for those hours. So, sorry, I'm just here to ask questions specifically about that.
Okay. So like it's a temporary, limited, or like just in the times that you have tourists doing tours, or even during like the school year.
Right.
But I mean,
Aggie Kessler, Sergeant Arms for the record. So it'd be in our peak seasons, which happens in the spring when you're in session, well, you're still in session and the school groups come in, they want to see the legislature in action. And then in the fall, where we offer tours every hour on the hour for leaf keepers. We do 3,000 tours a year at the State House.
Between school students and tourists. And on the 5.4 salary increase, was that over the 2 years of the ban?
this is the second year.
It was 5.4 for this, just for the second year.
Correct. It was 6.4, I think. The year before. This next paragraph, here, the legislative branch budgets by department, we talked a little bit before when I was in here about moving legislative operations around. Once we get past the proposed motions that we're at JLMC, I'll show you the chart so you can kind of see what that looks like. But just so we know, JLMC did have a couple of motions that they had made, one of which was that if the numbers change substantially after the increase in trail service funding costs, I would report back to them and we would look at that. So I wanted to show you that first slide where we had the percentages, we had -2 and 20%. Right? Here's what it would look like if there had been no changes made whatsoever. So if everything had stayed the same, every department you can see is between 3 to 4% increase. That's as if the community systems didn't move. Everybody stayed where they were. And then you can see that's 3.97% down to 3.76 with a reversion. Then with the ledge ops changes, this is moving that $900,000 around. That's where these wilder swings. Again, these are a little bit less than the first slide because there's an increase in this piece. One thing I do want to mention, Senator Ruth had asked at the JLMC meeting what the increases have been over the years. In the past 4 years, the average increase was 8.2% year over year. So this is down to 8%. And then we did have an increase in those service fund fees, which I'll point out here. If I can get the right number here. The growth in
Capital Police Service didn't start yet, right?
correct. Yep. Whatever reason that happens to be showing a blank sheet, which can make me super happy. So if I found it. I don't know why the PDF didn't show the second memo, but the second memo, which is on your website, I'll make sure it all has the right version, if there's anything wrong with it.
Is that part 3?
It would be, part 3, correct. I don't know why the memo, the PDF. Didn't.
I'm looking online.
I've got it.
Could be just a PDF like that, to show you what, that's showing $166,000, which that increase. And then the last parts 4 through the end is every single green line item, every single position from soup to nuts. So if I can have me answer any questions about every single one of those, can happily throw it back on the screen with the font. It's very tiny. So that's all I have. Unless you have specific questions, which I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, well, we can. Who has your section? Do we know?
You do.
Is it me? I will look it over more closely. And reach out if I have questions.
Good.
I don't have any questions. Anybody else? Let's see if I already asked all of them. I feel like since we have all the directors here, I feel like that's up.
I used to have like them always. Budget.
Yeah.
In the old days, it was everybody for themselves.
Good team.
We should ask them if everybody's happy.
Okay. They look at me. They're also like, even the chief.
Please keep that on the record.
Okay, well, thank you for your time. Good work on
Thank
this.
you.
Thanks, Scott.
You know what, I think that's.
Now we're unmuted. We're back to the FY 27 budget request. We have the Humanities Council, no, the Arts Council.
That's okay. We're usually sitting right next to each other,
Right.
so that's why.
And I'll let you introduce yourself.
Okay, great. Everyone, I'm Susan Evans LaFleur, the Executive Director of the Vermont Arts Council. Happy to be wrapping up your week with you. As many of you have heard us say, the council is the state's arts agency and the state affiliate of the National Endowment for the Arts. What we really do is work to envision a Vermont where all artists can thrive and where creativity is at the heart of our communities. And we've been doing this since 1965 as the state's provider of funding, advocacy, and information for the arts in Vermont. So I'm not really going to break any news to you here that to say that we're in pretty challenging, unprecedented times. I'm sure you've heard this again and again from folks in your committee. The upheaval from the government is really affecting so many parts of Vermont life, and the arts and culture sector are being directly targeted. From cuts to federal agencies, to changing priorities of federal grant making, to the dissolution of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and on and on and on. Vermont's arts and culture sector is really under tremendous pressure right now. At the same time, over the past year, we've seen time and again the power that the arts and humanities and libraries and museums have to heal us, to connect us, bring us together. And, you know, I think it's worth saying that America's cultural sector is being uniquely targeted, I think, because of the tremendous power we have to make positive change in our communities through the practice of what we do. The creative sector really shows us new ways of looking at the world and helps us remember what being human is really all about. So with the Arts Council, we really see our role in the state as supporting the infrastructure that the creative sector needs to thrive and meet the needs of our communities. So we work primarily no, great. All ways of being creative are welcome at this table. We work primarily as grant makers. So we invest state, private, and federal support in communities across the state. We also are conveners. We bring people together for learning, connection, and to advance the arts. And we are the state's advocates and storytellers for the power of our sector. Next, though, please.
Sorry, I had to reach.
Oh, no, that's okay. I think I can, well.
No, it's okay.
Okay, thanks. I'll just give up. So in FY 25, the council awarded a little over $1.4 million in direct grant funding. So those 255 total grants to 95 individuals, 139 organizations in every county in the state. Grants directly supported artists to create new work, created more public art for our communities, supported arts education, and arts organizations who are really adding vibrancy to our communities. The council also administers 2 grant programs on behalf of the state, the Cultural Facilities Grant Program and the Art and State Buildings Program, which are funded through the Capitol Bill. And I was thinking about what to share today, and you know, there's 255 grants, and every single grant I can tell you an incredible story. So I'm just going to pick 2 brief ones. If you go to the next slide. The first is in the town of Lunenburg, Vermont's far eastern border. The town of Lunenburg received an arts project grant to work with the community to paint a mural that is now located at the transfer station, the town.
Yeah.
And I'll share a quote with you from the project lead.
Did they build the thing to make the mural, or is that something that was there?
That's a great question. I believe it was our,
Looks like
it
it's
was
standing up
built. Yeah,
wood shop.
Maybe they-
yeah, I think they did build it. It was a community project, so they actually built kind of figured out the location and talked with the community, brought in an artist. What they said was that rural communities operate on shoestring budgets, and often convincing voters to fund the arts is very hard. This project has certainly pleased our community, which could mean in the future we could ask taxpayers to fund art projects and they would say yes. We've heard a lot from residents who also wish they volunteered some time to help install the mural. Even with funding, these projects require a great deal of volunteerism, and we definitely know the next art project we undertake, there will be plenty of volunteers to help out. For the impact and engagement numbers, I've included our entire town population because everyone, in all caps, visits the transfer station almost on a weekly basis, and certainly everyone on a monthly basis. And you can't miss the mural. And we know from comments that residents have been bringing their kids to the transfer station when they ordinarily wouldn't, just so they can see the mural they made.
Nice.
If you'll go to the next slide, I just have one more example from an organization called the Arts Bus. It's an arts education program in Randolph. As the name suggests, they have a bus, they travel around to schools, community centers, They received an arts operating grant to support their work. And they shared that the Arts Council funding has been pivotal to the success of the Arts Bus through an incredible year of reaching milestones, climbing hills, bridging gaps, and overcoming obstacles. This multi-year operating support paved the way to add a person to our staff and devote more time to business development, which turned out to be an accelerant too. To have your endorsement allowed us to reach our goals for new fundraising, and we've secured 2 more multi-year grants, which also add routine program partners, both of which have secured our revenue streams for the next 2 years. Further, through the classes you've provided, the chance to work with you as a panelist, and the publicity you've afforded us with your talented team, we've felt appreciated, included, informed, and made better by being part of this community. So I love this example because it also speaks to not only creating amazing work, creating projects, creating things for kids, but the important kind of behind the scenes role that the Arts Council plays in business development, in supporting the nuts and bolts that nonprofits, which are businesses, need to get things done. So if you go to the next slide, please, I'll just take a brief moment to expand on the important role that the creative sector plays in Vermont's overall economy. So the creative sector is our collective enterprises, businesses, organizations, individuals, anyone whose products or services really has artistic and creative content at its root. And the council is committed to growing our creative economy in order to grow our overall economy for all Vermonters. And one of the council's main initiatives is the Vermont Creative Network, which is celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year. It was created in statute in 2016, and it's focused on bringing together a broad coalition of organizations, businesses, and individuals to advance creativity across the state. We know that when we invest in the arts, culture, and creativity as essential infrastructure, it means that we see a corresponding increase in statewide investment and resources for the creative sector, from in our smallest towns to our biggest cities. And according to the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis in 2023, the Vermont arts and culture sector was a more than $1.2 billion industry. We're 3% of the state's GSP, and we account for over 10,000 jobs. Although in terms of federal changes, this has been crucial data to us to help us understand how the sector is growing and building. We work with other states to compare state by state data. We had heard some rumors. I will say breaking news. I just got an email from them this morning that the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis is no longer collecting this data for the sector. So that is something we're working with our partners regionally and nationally to ensure that we can still get the data we need to move forward where we have relied on our federal partners before. Go to the next slide, please. We also know that patrons of live arts and culture events are supporting our local economies. In a 2022 national survey, we found that there were 1.4 million attendees to nonprofit arts and culture events in Vermont that year. 25% of the folks who attended were local, meaning they were from the county in which it was taking place. 75% were from out of the county. And this study was great because it let us put some hard numbers on how much money they spent on top of just buying a ticket. So this could be anything from paying for parking, going out to dinner, paying a babysitter. Non-local attendees were spending over $50 per person on top of the cost of their ticket, and locals were spending just under $30 every time they buy a ticket. And these numbers are larger in the bigger cities too. I think in Burlington, the out-of-towners number was over $75 as well. And economic data is great, but it's also about what Vermonters think about the arts. So in 2024, as part of the Vermonter poll, we found that 93% of respondents believe that opportunities to view and participate in arts and culture are an important part of thriving and healthy communities. And then 87% of folks agree that the arts and culture are an important part of K-12 education. And when they think about what defines Vermont, 84% of people said that the arts are important to the identity of our state. It's the intangible thing that makes us who we are. Next slide, please.
Susan, maybe having slide with the art in the state building, does that include the art that's outside, like transportation projects?
So it depends on which transportation projects. Mostly, yes, there are. So the Art State Buildings program is funding to go along with capital projects to create a new public artwork as part of a public building.
So AOT had their own art fund, because I know some transportation projects, that's art. I didn't know.
So the way Art and State Buildings is set up is that the funding, we administer the program with the funding to basically pay the artist to create the work. And then once the work is installed, it becomes property of VGS. So then VGS manages it through their budget. So they are maintaining it. You'll see, I mean, they're everywhere in Vermont. There's
Yeah.
over 35 of projects across the state, including, yes, and a lot of the rest, there's often art along the rest stops. There was another project, actually, I'm gonna get totally aside here, that was started in the 60s and 70s that was called Sculpture on the Highways. And the Arts Council was involved in the creation of that project, but it has been long since passed. And it was actually this very interesting thing where they had,
So where the whale tails came from?
I don't think that was the whale's tails, no, but it was one of the pieces that's in Williston Rest Stop. Heading north in the Williston Rest Stop, there's a very large concrete sculpture that was created as part of that. So they actually brought artists from around the country to do the symposium in Vermont on, one year it was concrete sculpture, and I think the next year it was stone. And then they installed them, and they're part of the Department of Transportation. And right now, we're not actually working on this. I'm just fascinated by it. David Sheets and BBS and has brought in some consultants to help kind of assess the state of all of those artworks too. Cool aside, but a good one because it's everywhere.
But he also worked with some artists on some bus stops.
So we did, and yeah, the Vermont Arts Council funded a bus stop project in Virgins in partnership with Agency of Transportation. We've had a great relationship with Agency of Transportation. There's actually a guide now that we created with them to public art, how to create public art as part of the transportation project. It's called Flower Stop. If you ever drive through Virgins,
Did you testify in transportation or did somebody?
I did not, but someone else did, yeah.
Maybe some from AOT that worked.
Yep, that one was fun too. It was a partnership with Northland's, the job training program in Virginia. They're welders. And then the artist Kat Cleary created giant metal flower sculptures and then developed them with the students.
Yeah.
And it really lightens up that walk. So the Arts Council is the only state arts agency in the country that operates as an independent nonprofit. We are a quasi-state agency created in statute in 1965 to act as the state's arts agency. The council receives the majority of its funding from two sources, the National Endowment for the Arts and the state of Vermont. The NEA requires that the state government match the federal dollars, dollar for dollar. Our general fund match allows us to secure substantial federal funds each year that are distributed to organizations, schools, and communities in all areas of the state. While there has been so much that's uncertain about federal funding, in terms of the Arts Council, we have been in an incredibly fortunate position. We have retained our federal funding with no cuts. The National Endowment for the Arts continues to operate. We've received all of our federal money from FY26 so far. The budget was just passed in DC a couple weeks ago that funds the NEA, and we've been informed by the NEA that we should plan on level funding for FY27. It's pretty monumental given what our partners are going through. And we recognize that while this is a good story of stability that we want to continue, there are also other changes to NEA funding that artists are experiencing in Vermont. There's limits to freedom of expression that artists are experiencing across the nation, and that the Arts Council really remains committed to using our public funds to invest in communities to support all Vermonters with access to the arts and arts education and community connection. So we've been told that our budget will be the same as last year, around $1,071,000. And
that would be the state match would be the same as your FY26 budget amount, the 1,971, or do you get more money in addition to the NEA match?
Can you say that?
Your state, you probably have it in.
Can you go to the next slide? Actually, that way it's some just numbers on budget.
That's this is what I was asking.
So yeah, last year, our match, they ended up adding additional funding for 250th related projects last year. So they're telling us that this is the amount we should be aiming for this year. We're in the governor's budget, a little over $1 million, which is a 3% increase from last year. So that puts us at a gap between what we are required to match from the NEA and what we're in the governor's recommended budget for around $38,000. In previous years, we've received notice of how much our award will be around April, which we always bring to you.
Right.
Last year, we actually didn't find out until July. So we'll say we were $2 off on our guests, but that was okay last year. So we will continue to be in conversation just so we know what that is, because we know it is, we know that things are, we know that things are tight. We appreciate the support.
It would be for how does it affect between the federal fiscal year and the state fiscal year?
So they look for the amount it has to be in the general fund appropriated dollars to the State Arts Council in the most recent budget year. So It's like we have a couple month lag
Right.
of how that works. And as I started with today, and I think it's important to say that NEA's funds have not been cut. I also feel like it's important to talk about the other sectors, including the nonprofit cultural organizations who receive state support, who have been significantly impacted in the past year. Vermont Humanities, the Historical Society, the Symphony. Last year, Vermont Humanities had $630,000 in appropriated federal funding clawed back, and they anticipate that they will receive no federal funding in this current fiscal year. The Vermont Symphony Orchestra had a grant from the NEA canceled that they had already planned on using actually for a concert, part of their concert series that included last year's concert in this building. And the Vermont Historical Society has routinely received funding from the Institute for Museum and Library Services, but they are moving forward assuming that funding from that agency will no longer be available. And I know all of you see every day the important role that our state's cultural agencies play. That's from economic development to student success, community cohesion, to really being at the heart of helping people understand how our democracy functions. And when we stop supporting this essential slice of public life with public funding, we're really diminishing our prospects for the long-term future of our state. And because this year has been so hard, and because Vermont's arts and cultural organizations are really in the crosshairs, our 4 cultural organizations are also putting forward a request for a 10% increase to funding. If you'll go to the next slide, pick up on the next slide. This 10% increase is really nowhere near closing the gap that these organizations are facing, nor is that our intent with asking. We know that that would be unsustainable to ask the state to close these gaps in federal funding. Instead, we're really hoping that this request is seen in the spirit of signifying to Vermont communities that the state has their back, that the state believes in the work that they do, and that the state really values what our cultural sector brings to communities statewide. And for the Arts Council, that 10% increase would cover the amount required for our federal match, allow us to increase grant making in the communities that have been most hit by these other federal cuts. And I'm sure my partners in the other cultural organizations would be happy to talk to you about specifics for them as well. Again, I think one to note too is the Historical Society has some kind of statutorily required ways that they need to operate. The 3% budget increase does not cover the increase in those costs. So with an only 3% budget increase, the Historical Society actually has to cut their budget based on what they need to do in statute. So in thinking about this, and we know that asks are hard, especially in this year, I just want to mention just a little kind, President John F. Kennedy. And in 1962, President Kennedy said a quote that I love. It's actually on the side of the Kennedy Center. So he said in 1962, I am certain that after the dust of centuries has passed over our cities, we too will be remembered, not for victories or defeats in battle or in politics, but for our contribution to the human spirit. And that's really what our cultural organizations are doing for all of us. We're building our human spirit here in Vermont, and we want to keep doing it. And we need that human spirit so that we can continue thriving for whatever comes ahead for all of us.
Thank you.
I like the way you called it the Kennedys.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that.
It's a very special place. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have some stickers for you.
That's
good. I think I do. I should overcome it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll put it on the
This one. Sure.
This side, short for Mars.
Thank you.
I know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
If you want to pass those down, you can feel free to share them with friends and family. Thank you all. I'm sure you are ready for a little break from this very long week.
Well,
I am. Yeah.
It's too good, you couldn't even make the joke.
No, couldn't even thought it was someone.
thank you. And
Thank
anybody has any questions, public announcements,
Yes.
secrets to share?